Hi, everybody. So in this recording, I want to go over how you're going to come up with the claim structure for your essay. So by the claim structure, I mean your thesis and your topic sentences. So I'm back here on the prompt, and I'm just at the very kind of middle of the prompt. So if you just scroll down and you come into need help organizing your ideas, that's where we're at right now. So when you're coming up with your thesis idea and topic sentence ideas, I'm going to encourage you guys to come up with your topic sentence ideas first. And when you're thinking about those, you can kind of think about organizing them by argument or by rhetorical strategy or technique. Remember, the question you're answering is, was the author successful in achieving his or her purpose with the target audience? So one way that you can answer that question is considering all the different arguments that the writer made and decide whether or not each one of those arguments was effective. So for example, let's say you're doing Michael Pollan. Remember, he has kind of chunked his essay into different sections, and he's got those little kind of metaphorical titles on those. So, he talks about growing, flowering, sprouting, harvesting. In each one of those sections, he's making different arguments, and you can decide whether or not each one of those arguments was effective with the target audience. For example, he's got an argument about biological pollution. Pollan ends up saying that we have that biological pollution will result from genetically engineered foods, and that the government and Monsanto both know this, but they're not doing anything about it. And so you would decide whether or not Pollan effectively made that argument with the target audience. His harvesting section, he has an implicit argument in the harvesting section. In that section, that's when he's in the Meet the Beatles. I'm sorry, not the harvesting. I'm thinking about the Meet the Beatles. When he's in the Meet the Beatles section, he has an implicit argument. The Beatles are those farmers, and he looks at 3 different farmers, and each farmer represents a different mode of agriculture. So he talks about the conventional farmer, that's the person who's using all the different chemicals and sprays on the crops, and then they have somebody who's using genetically engineered crops, and then he's got a farmer who's doing it organically. And when we get through that section, we realize that the organic farmer seems to be the best situation. So Pollan ends up making an implicit argument in that section of Meet the Beatles that in fact the organic method seems to be the best method. And you would ask yourself whether or not you think that argument that Pollan made, in that case an implied argument, an implicit argument, whether or not that was effective with the target audience. So that's one way that you can organize it. You could come up with, look at the different arguments that the author made, and each topic sentence could be on a different one of those arguments and deciding whether or not that argument was effective. So if you did that, let's say you see that 3 of the arguments were effective and maybe 1 wasn't, or maybe 3 weren't effective and 1 was. So kind of think about how you're going to organize your topic sentences as well after you've come up with them. The other way that you can organize your idea is by rhetorical strategy or technique. So here's where you could kind of talk about using delayed topic sentence ideas or using metaphors. Or with Foster Wallace, he's got this really kind of interesting sneak attack strategy that I like to call what he's kind of doing in that. So readers of Gourmet magazine, when they open that thing up and it's in the field notes section, they think they're just getting a report about this lobster festival that happens every year. They don't know when they open up that article that it's actually a sneak attack and it's going to attack them it is going to question them on the ethics of their food choices, specifically eating lobsters. And so when they first start reading it, it's all about this lobster festival and how kind of silly it is, and this kind of class distinction between people who are going there and wearing little claws on their head, little headbands with little claws on, and pulling in coolers and things like that. He kind of opens it up as this kind of class distinction, and then later on he ends up having this really serious argument about whether or not it's ethical to eat lobsters. And so you could talk about whether that strategy was effective, the way that he kind of did this kind of sneak attack. That could be one of your topic sentence ideas. Or you could take a look at his use of footnotes. He used this strategy of footnotes, and whether or not, remember, most of his arguments, his really strong arguments, happen in the footnotes. And so he's hoping that the people who are interested, right? It's a matter of your interest. The people who are interested in reading the footnotes, those are the people he's actually trying to convince. He doesn't put those main arguments, or those kind of a lot of the support for his main arguments in the body of his text, but rather he chooses to put that in the actual footnote, and you can decide whether or not that was an effective technique for him to achieve his purpose with that target audience. Okay, so you would just kind of think about the different techniques that the writer was using and then create topic sentences around each one of those. So after you've come up with your topic sentences, then you can create your thesis. And I should say that most stronger essays, they're usually not just like glowing, like saying, oh, the author just did a perfect job in achieving his goal with the target audience, but rather they're measured somewhat. So they'll say the writer does these things well and these things not so well. And you'll see the sample outline here. That's exactly what the writer is doing. He's saying that the writer, you guys didn't read this article, but you can still kind of get the sense of rhetorical analysis, that the writer is doing some things well and then something else he's not doing well. And then that's the thesis, and then those topic sentences break that down. The other thing that I really want to highlight is that you want to make sure that your topic sentences have the red, green, and blue. And I'm missing something here. Hold on for a second. Magic. The paragraph got bigger. I realized I was missing this part in here. Okay, so you want to make sure that each one of your claims, that would be your thesis, and all of your topic sentences have what I'm going to call the blue, the red, and the green. So kind of thinking about each one of those topic sentences and thesis, and your thesis statement should be talking about the effectiveness of the argument. So you should actually, don't call it argument, whatever the argument is. You're going to actually be more specific there on the target audience. So one thing that I really recommend is that you kind of color code your own claim structure to make sure you're on task. So you're going to notice in this example here, there's all this blue in here, which is about the effectiveness of the argument. So effectively convinces, failure, hurts. Those are all words that are indicating whether or not the argument was effective. Able, he's able to convince, provide strong evidence, credibility, all about this idea of the effectiveness. And then the argument itself here, and note how the writer isn't just saying argument down here, is actually calling out what the argument is. So beneficial to the argument, beneficial alternative to farming practices, possible benefits of genetically engineered foods, protecting the environment. So it's actually kind of highlighting what all those different arguments are. This actually should be red because it's that entire argument is what he's looking at there. Okay, so make sure you have that part in there. And then the green, which we always come back to that target audience. And remember, we're not going to use that language, target audience, but we're going to be more specific. So environmentalist audience. Here it just says audience, convinces audience. This other one holds the similar values to his audience. So you want to make sure you're always putting the focus on the audience and of course not you. And the last one here is the optional one. That's the orange. That's if you are doing one of these measured thesis ideas where you have, the writer's doing these things well and these other things not so well. And so in this case, we had those counterpoints, heard his case. And so that's what that kind of opposite stance. These are all good things, right? The first ones are all good ones, good things that Rao's doing. And the last one is something that had a little pitfall. So what I created here is just a little template for you. And I told you guys to make sure that you are, first think about argument or strategy, and then make sure you kind of color code your ideas to make sure you're always staying focused on the effectiveness of the argument on the target audience. Okay, I hope that helps. This video went a little longer than I wanted to, but email me if you have any questions. I'm guessing one question some people might have right now is, can I do both? Can I do some on argument and some on strategy? I'm going to say that that's okay to do. Stronger essays are going to have more cohesion, meaning they have more kind of relationship between the topic sentence ideas. So they're all argument or they're all rhetorical strategy. Kind of mixing and matching isn't as what we call cohesive. So I'm going to encourage you guys to try to be cohesive. Okay, you guys, let me know if you have questions. We'll talk soon.